Black people, they are the aboriginals of every continent.
It has been proven that the first men in China were black.
China's first dynasty and emperors were black.
We're the first people to circumnavigate the planet. We're the first Europeans. We're the first Asians. We're the first Americans. We're the first everything. We was on every continent before anybody else ever evolved. If you dig long enough, you're going to find black folks everywhere in the beginning.
Black people are God's chosen people. That's why they're naturally spiritual. That's why they're overlooked. That's why they're copied across the whole planet Earth.
The oldest people on the earth in every part of the planet, even in Europe, Asia, Australia, Africa, America, they are all melanated beings. Going down to the Peking man of Asia, the oldest people are fully African. Going to England, Cheddar man, 10,000 years ago, the oldest man are African. Going into Russia, the oldest remains are African. The oldest remains of Italy, right? African. In Romania, and also in America, Lucia being an African woman, African people, we are the original people of the planet. And other people just came about 6,000 years ago.
All Asians originated from black people. Filipinos, Chinese, Koreans, Japanese. The original ancestors of those Asians came from Africa. They originated from black people. But many Asians of these days tend to deny these truths, even though there are many facts that are out there. There's this one Chinese researcher who wanted to prove to the world that Chinese had their own unique ancestors, and then he performed the research for 5 years. During the research, he ended up accepting that Chinese originated from black people.
Asians are black descendants from African progenitors. Koreans, Vietnamese, and all modern humans originated out of Africa, according to science. Genetic and fossil evidence prove Homo sapiens first emerged in the motherland, aka Aquabellan, renamed Africa by pale cave dweller colonizers. Africa means the land of Ifri. Ifri means cave dwellers in Berber language. Ancient Nigerians, Eritrean, Ethiopian, and Zulu did not call themselves African. That's a colonial name by Tulsi-colored colonizers. They called their group by their tribe or nation's name, which originated from a royal family name. Africa is a colonial name given by pale cave dweller colonizers who crossbred with black women by force. Colonizing is reproductive first and territorial second. All non-African populations, including Europeans, Asians, North, South, and Central Americans, descended from a small group who migrated out of Africa over thousands of years ago, developing distinct physical features and genetic variations via adaptation to local environments. Some of these non-African beings interbred with other archaic hominin groups who migrated from Africa much earlier, such as Neanderthals in Eurasia, and Denisovans and East Asians.
Look up how old African people are, and then look up how old Europeans are. Let's do that. This is Google. It's not. Google wasn't made by a black person, so no one can say shit to us. So,
Africans are around 7 million years old.
we're 7 million years old. All right? Happy birthday, African. How old are Europeans?
The genetic lineage of Europe mysteriously transformed about 4,500 years ago.
Are you kidding me?
Okay, hold on.
You're 4,500 years old.
Wait, how old?
And we 7 million.
Well, African civilization was 3150 BC. I think this is a more complicated question. So the oldest civilization is from Southern Africa, the San people from Southern
The
Africa.
San people that look Asian. Yes. The San people. That's where everybody's traced from. You can see the documentary, The Journey of Man, where this white guy, who's a geneticist, proved that. The Journey of Man. It's on YouTube. They even have a book. This white dude went out, so you guys will believe it. Blonde-haired white guy wanted to find out the origin of everyone, and they trace it back to those San people who are from South Africa, who have Asiatic faces. That is where Asian people have their faces from. The Asian look is African. It is not from China. It's from Africa. There are African tribes that have Asiatic faces. That's where it comes from.
The African influence on Chinese civilization is a story of resilience, ingenuity, and interconnectedness. From the early Pygmies and Phonanese people to the dynasties founded by African kings, and from the trade networks of Zhenjiani to the Afrocoid individuals documented in early 20th century photographs, this narrative is rich with evidence. It challenges the Eurocentric lens through which history is often viewed and highlights the shared heritage of humanity. China's history, illuminated by these discoveries, serves as a reminder of the contributions of diverse peoples to the development of civilization. The images from ancient caves, combined with the photographs from the 20th century, create a continuum that connects the past to the present. These stories, long hidden or dismissed, are now coming to light, offering a more inclusive understanding of China's origins. The legacy of Africans in China is not just a historical curiosity, it is a vital part of the global narrative. It underscores the importance of migration, innovation, and cultural exchange in shaping the world we know today. By acknowledging this history, we honor the contributions of Africans to one of the world's oldest and most influential civilizations.
Ancient Asia was once home to thriving black populations. Their presence reflected in early Chinese literature and legends. Black deities, emperors, warriors, and goddesses were revered and even venerated as ancestors in various Asian traditions. While Western academia often attempts to reframe these figures as enslaved individuals, Chinese historical records largely reject the notion of slavery in their early societies. Instead, they suggest the existence of ancient African settlements in Asia, with some evidence pointing to the region's earliest inhabitants being of Negro descent. Early Chinese legends relate traditions of divine dynasties, such as the Epoch of the Five Emperors. According to J.A. Rogers, the first Chinese emperor, known as Fuxi, is described as a woolly-haired Negro. Whether this was actually the case with this semi-legendary figure, we do not know, but the existence of black types in the region since the most remote times is known. There is evidence of substantial populations of blacks in early China. Archaeological studies have located a black substrum in the earliest periods of Chinese history, and reports of major kingdom ruled by blacks are frequently in Chinese documents. According to ancient myths, black people once lived in Taiwan. In remembrance, they hold festivals called the Pas-Tai Festival. It is held as a tribute to the little black people, or dwarfs, who are venerated as ancestral spirits in Taiwan. For the past 100 years or so, the Saisiat tribe, Saisiazu, has performed the songs and rites of the festival to bring good harvests, ward off bad luck, and keep alive the spirit of a race of people who are said to have preceded all others in Taiwan. In fact, the short black men the festival celebrates are one of the most ancient types of modern humans on this planet, and their descendants somewhat still survive in Asia today. They are said to be diminutive Africoids and are variously called pygmies, negritos, and eta. They are found in the Philippines, northern Malaysia, Thailand, Sumatra, and Indonesia, and other places. At least 4 groups tell stories of intermarrying with the so-called little black people, and one group, the Saisiat, continue to hold ceremonies in honor of those they call the Ta'ai, who they consider their teachers. According to Chinese archaeologist Guangqi Cheng, early skulls found in southern China bore evidence of oceanic Negroid types. He goes on to state that as early as 221 BC, Negritos, whom the Chinese call black dwarfs, are reported in the mountainous districts south of the Yangtze. Pictured above is a Shang dynasty drinking vessel made of bronze with an Africoid-type figure in a tiger's mouth. It appears to be the birth of a black man or a symbolic union with the tiger. In some regional Chinese myths, there are stories of mysterious dark-skinned warriors or sages who tamed or befriended tigers. These tales often symbolize strength, wisdom, and harmony with nature. Some Chinese aristocratic clans trace their origins to mythical ancestors born from unions between humans and sacred beasts, including tigers. In certain versions, a powerful dark-skinned figure, sometimes interpreted as a foreign warrior or an ancient deity, is said to have tamed a tiger, marking his divine or heroic nature. There were many black-skinned heroes in ancient Asia. In China, Baozheng was regarded as the embodiment of justice and was called the blue sky by the common people. For thousands of years, there have been countless literary works praising him. He is regarded as the most famous black man in Chinese history, especially among the Song dynasty period. The presence of black people in ancient Asia, though often minimized or overlooked, is preserved through myths, legends, and early literature that speak of their influence and legacy. While their physical population is no longer widespread in many parts of Asia, their memory endures.
There are several different major groups that make up these regions. One is the Negritos, a broad term that encompasses many of the native short-statured black peoples that are descended from the original African inhabitants of Sundaland. Some of these groups include the Onge, or the Andaman Islanders, the Aeta, and the Batak. These dark-skinned groups are often referred to as Orang Asli, or original peoples by the lighter-skinned Mongoloid peoples that migrated into these regions during the late Neolithic. These groups also include indigenous Australians, referred to in modern day as Australian Aborigines, as well as the various groups of Papua New Guinea, such as the people of Bougainville or the native Melanesian peoples of the Solomon Islands. These people are the descendants of the original African inhabitants of Sundaland and Sahul over 80,000 years ago.
I once had a professor of mine working on my doctorate tell me that she went to Japan and they went into the mountains of Japan. Now, this isn't a conscious woman by most definitions, but she couldn't wait to come back and tell me this. She said, Umar, I was in Japan. We went up into the spiritual temples of Japan, and we sat down in one of the temples waiting for the priest to come out and teach us a little bit about what they believe and what they stand for. She said, Umar, they walked out of the temples, and their skin was just as black as ours. They had gray afros because they were elders. Now, she said the phenotype looked like the modern Asian. But she said the skin was black and they had gray afros, hair standing up on top like Don King. And she said it totally overcame me. They sat down and they began to talk. And she said, I couldn't believe these were black men. They were Japanese, but they were black men.
China's rich history includes the fact that its first dynasty and emperor King Tu were of Africoid or black origins. The Shang dynasty, which followed, was the earliest documented rulership in China, and is credited with unifying the country's earliest elements to form its first civilization. Under the Black Dynasty, they were given the name Naki, meaning black man in Chinese. Calling an emperor. Black man is not a coincidence and does not pass without reason. It simply suggests that the entire dynasty had black roots. Fuxi, the legendary first Chinese emperor, was a woolly-haired black man who is said to have established government, social institutions, and cultural inventions, including the Book of Change, which is one of the oldest and most revered systems of philosophy.
You see what you're looking at here? That is the graph. You understand the graph? The first picture, the first one on the left is a Japanese. This is how original Japanese look like. Original. The one in the right is Indian, from India. This is how real Indian people in India look like. The original one. The one on the right, this is the process, what you want to call mestizos. They start to cross them with those incubators. They gave you this one. And then the next one on the right is after the incubators give birth to the one on the right. Then they have another mix again. They graph you out. So this is the graphing process. This is how modern day Asian look like, but this is how original Asian look like on the left. You see that? Grafting. You go to Asia right now, you'll find all of these faces still there. But they're going to tell you the faces, the first two faces you saw, they come from Africa. Did you understand? They're going to tell you the first two faces is not original from the land. They come from somewhere else. And the face you saw in the last one, that's the original face. This is the game. This is the game. Now, let me show you the Chinese, where the Chinese came from. Now, Chinese are African. Chinese are African. This is where the Chinese came from. Okay? Now, the reason why you saw it look like the one on the right, let me show you what causes it to look like the one on the right. Let me show it to you. That is what causes it to look like that, because that was the boom. Okay? That was the baby boomers. Boom. That.
There is something that could settle this debate of where the Chinese come from once and for all.
After that,
I'm meeting Professor Jin Li, one of China's leading geneticists. Recently, he led a project that set out to prove that the Chinese evolved independently from everyone else, from Homo erectus, here in China.
Before the project started, I was hoping that I could identify different from each other, and we are very close relatives.
An international study has found that the Chinese people originated not from Peking man in northern China, but from early humans in East Africa who moved through South Asia to China some 100,000 years ago, Hong Kong's Ming Pao daily reported, in a finding that confirms the single origin theory in anthropology. In China, school textbooks teach that the Chinese race evolved from Peking man, based on a theory that humans in Europe and Asia evolved from local species. But DNA specialist Jin Ling and his fellow researchers found that early humans belonged to different species, of which only the East African species developed into modern humans. This new finding nullifies the theory that the ancestors of the Chinese people were Peking man, who lived in northern China 400,000 years ago. The Chinese narrative, which stretches the evidence by leaps and bounds in the interests of nationalism rather than well-balanced academic inquiry, has been heavily discredited and criticized. The lack of hominin discoveries in China in comparison to Africa, which continues to regularly produce fossils, illustrates that Africa was a much more genetically diverse region of the world in the distant past, which is an indicator of its greater age. The findings, however, that the Chinese people are descended from Africans, by even Chinese themselves, amongst other genetic scientists from other regions of the world, added new weight to existing theories that all human life began in Africa. Academics from the University of Texas and their colleagues in China studied 28 population groups in China and concluded that most, if not all, had their genetic origins in Africa. They looked at pieces of DNA known as microsatellites, which are short repeating DNA segments that yield information about genetic variation among people. The researchers found that all Chinese have a great deal in common genetically, although there are some regional variations. The findings, published by the National Academy of Sciences in Washington, supports what has come to be known as the out-of-Africa theory. This theory contends that Homo sapiens, the modern form of human life, is descended from a population of ancestors who migrated out of Africa about 100,000 years ago. Based on DNA analyses of 100,000 samples gathered from around the world, a number of human families evolved in East Africa some 150,000 years ago, said Li Hui, a member of Jin Ling's team. About 100,000 years ago, some of those humans began to leave Africa, with some people moving to China via South and Southeast Asia, Li stated. This research was conducted by an international team of researchers from Brazil, Russia, India, and other nations in a 5-year project studying the geographic and genealogical roots related to the spread and settlement of modern humans.
Some believe Indians descend from Ethiopians, but the truth is more complex. Cushitic and Semitic East Africans have about half West Eurasian ancestry from Natufians and half local African ancestry from Omotic and Nilotic groups. On the other hand, South Indians and Sri Lankans, often compared to them, have high levels of ancient ancestral South Indian, AASI, ancestry. This, combined with West Eurasian admixture from Iranian farmers and steppe nomads, can create phenotypes that resemble East Africans. Genetically, though, ancient South Indians belong to the East Eurasian cluster, not the South Saharan African cluster, which is highly diverse. Their East Eurasian ancestry is more basal, making them phenotypically closer to South Saharan Africans, where humans originated.
So if black is the original color, and Africa is the original motherland, where everybody came from, where every race originated. Originally, the whites, Caucasian, the Mongoloid, Asian, the Australoid, the Hispanic, and the Latino, being the indigenous to Central and South America, the Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders, the Native American and Alaskan natives, the Middle Eastern people. If we all came from Africa, originally, at one point or another in the past, then that would mean that everybody in the world, you and me looking at the phone at each other, are black.
As people moved outward, there was a mutation, and if you were in the north, it allowed that mutation to live, which is how we got white people.
Yes.
Would that follow?
Yeah. If Nina Jablonski, who spoke in another one of your things, explained this, and she played a role in studying the reason for dark skin, which is if you have lots of intense sunlight, it destroys folic acid, and it turns out folic acid is really important for babies to develop properly, so it's not too good for a population for the babies to not develop properly. So that's why dark skin. Now, as you move north, there's another essential vitamin called vitamin D. There's an intermediate, biochemical intermediate, that needs to be then converted by the liver, but that intermediate's formed by UV light going through the skin. If you're near the equator and you have a dark skin, it still gets through enough to get your vitamin D. But now if you go north and it's cold and you wrap up and it's less sun because the sun's coming at an angle now, you will get rickets and have other problems supposedly. So that's thought to be the reason for selection for lighter skin.
We're looking at three phases. We're looking, as you pointed out, number one, as African people as the indigenous or aboriginal people of Asia. Black people are the parent people of humanity. And we know this based not only on, as you pointed out, anthropology, but also more recently and specifically DNA studies. For example, about 3 years ago, the Los Angeles Times, that grew up in LA, ran a big article called Chinese Roots Lie in Africa. And I believe the first sentence says that 80% of all the people in China today, 1/5 of all humanity has African DNA, has African genes. So we know that you have black folk in Asia as the first people based on DNA, but also historical traditions in all of the major Asian civilizations. So
there was two different types of original Japanese people. Types of people that originally were in Japan. Because Japanese people alone are not supposed to be that pale skinned.
They were never white.
They were never white. Those Chinese people that came in basically
they killed all of them.
They killed all of them. So when they came and then they started, also like mating with some of the Japanese people there, then they keep becoming whiter and whiter and whiter and whiter. And bam, yeah, dude.
They erased their
original history.
Wow.
Japan itself, its history itself is so fucked. Like it has so much history that doesn't get talked about. Because now we see the Japan of today.
And they covered it with Hello Kitty. And Naruto.
The first semi-divine emperor, Fuxi, is described as a woolly-haired African. Finally, we come to China and Japan. I just left China in March. I travel all the time because it's not enough just to read the books. If you're serious, you have to go out and do first-hand research. And so in China, I went over there. I didn't have a great desire to go there, but I knew my field was the African presence in Asia. China is a very ancient country. It's the largest country in Asia. Went over there with knowledge that the first people in China were black. The historical tradition says that the first semi-divine emperor, Fuxi, is described as a woolly-haired African. In the traditions of China, you have people called black dwarfs, the original people of China. I went over there knowing that the people who formed the Shang dynasty, the parent dynasty of China, was black. In fact, the Shang are described by their successors, the Zhou, as having black and oily skin. China is very interesting in the sense that it seems that the black presence in China has been erased from the historical memory.
Alright guys, now that we have watched all of those clips, I want to read some of the insights that I have taken from the scientific studies that were made about this topic, and then you tell me what you think. Scientific evidence overwhelmingly supports the out of Africa theory, which says that all modern humans, including Asian populations, share a common ancestry originating in Africa. Genetic studies indicate that early modern humans migrated from Africa to Asia roughly 60,000 up to 90,000 years ago, where they later evolved distinct physical traits. Large-scale DNA studies analyzing Y chromosomal and mitochondrial DNA trace the paternal and the maternal lineages of Asian populations back to Africa. Studies of Y chromosomal markers in over 20,000 males across Asia and Oceania found mutations associated with an African ancestor, indicating that modern humans from Africa replaced earlier populations in East Asia. Genetic data refutes the theory that East Asians evolved independently from earlier humans like Homo erectus found in China, confirming instead an African origin for the vast majority of the modern population. Early humans moved from Africa through the Arabian corridor into South and Southeast Asia, eventually settling in East Asia. Some of the earliest inhabitants of Southeast Asia, known as Negrito groups, such as Manik in the Thailand, possess genetic heritage from the initial migration out of Africa over 60,000 years ago. These tribe, Negritos, they exist in Thailand and in the Philippines. So for those of you guys who have been to the Philippines, you have seen some of the black Filipinos. Those are the people who are known as Negrito. They're not only found in the Philippines, they're also found in Thailand and in many other Southeast Asian countries. Some studies have suggested that early African populations, such as the San people, share ancient phenotypic traits with some Asian groups, which were later modified through genetic drift and adaptation. The San people is one of the tribes that exist in South Africa. These people, if you look at them, the facial features, the nose, their eyes, they look exactly like Asians. The only difference is how light their skin is. The skin of the Asians tend to be lighter than the skin of those San people. But the facial features, the way they look physically, they look exactly the same. Black people have been present in China since at least the Tang Dynasty. This Tang Dynasty existed since 618 up to 907 AD. That's when this Tang Dynasty existed in China. And at that time, the Tang Dynasty was performing trade interactions with East African countries. Imagine, it was during 618 AD. China was already having interactions with East African countries. Individuals of mixed African and Asian ancestry, sometimes referred to Afro-Asians or Brazilians, exist throughout Asia, often resulting from more recent migration and trading, particularly in countries like Pakistan, India, and Sri Lanka. There are some black people who exist in these Asian countries, and we find them in Sri Lanka and Pakistan. And those black people arrived in those countries recently through the trade interactions between those Asian countries and African countries. But it doesn't mean that all black people in Asian countries arrived there recently. There are many black people who arrived in those Asian countries thousands of years ago. DNA studies of the Swahili coast have shown evidence of ancient, long-term genetic intermingling between African residents and Asian merchants from the Persia and India between 900 and 1100 AD. All of those are the facts that show you how black people have been existing in these Asian countries for many years. I know many Asians will not accept this truth that they originated from black people, but it is documented. The research was done. Researchers have confirmed it. All Asians have originated from black people, and that's why you're black people, you should be proud of your own, should be proud of yourself, because they are the original settlers of all places around the world. Europeans came from black people. Asians, they came from black people. Everywhere, black people are the original settlers. That was it for today, guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section, and if you have not yet liked the video, please remember to click on the like button and also subscribe for more interesting episodes like this. Mr. TA signing off. Ciao.